Trucker sees a Marine and his K-9 dragged. His next move exposes a corruption ring inside the county he could have taken the bounty. 10,000 for a tip, no questions asked. One hand on the wheel, one ghost in his chest, and a dog refusing to let go of his Marine. He didn't stop to be brave. He stopped because the animal was telling the truth louder than the law. By the time the cuffs finally clicked in that county, a postcard would arrive from the far north. Ribs healed, paws strong, 2 survivors helping others like them. This isn't a story about a rescue on a highway. It's about what happens when a trucker chooses a promise over a paycheck, when a German shepherd teaches a grown man how to hear again. The highway through Red Rock County burned like a hot brand across the desert. Heat shimmered in sheets. Air tasted like tin. Jack Bear Lawson kept his rig at 60, eyes steady, mind blank. He liked it that way. Motion meant he did not have to remember the Ohio house that was too quiet, the empty chair at a kitchen table that never cooled. The mirage ahead thickened. A lifted pickup flew west, kicking a tail of dust. Something dragged behind it. Not a tarp, not a tire. It had weight. It had angles that were wrong for junk. Jack leaned forward. The cab smelled like coffee and old leather. The thing bounced, caught, rolled. Then he saw arms, then a head, then a flash of black and tan fur, a man in torn camo and a German shepherd tied to the same tow strap. Flesh on asphalt. The dog was alive. He was fighting the road, throwing his body over the Marine's skull when the truck hit a rough patch. It was protection, wild and deliberate, the kind that ignores pain. The horn cord ripped in Jack's fist. The big diesel screamed. Brakes bit. Tires howled. His rig slithered and planted, trailer folding just enough to wall the lane. Steel across blacktop. No way through. The pickup wobbled and skated to a stop 20 feet out. The driver popped his door and came out fast. Lean man. Designer jeans turned red with dust. Hair product losing to the heat. Sunglasses polished like a mirror. Conrad Slate. Jack knew the face from gas station posters. A local donor. A lender. A grin in ribbon cuttings. You insane old man. Move the truck. Jack stepped off the running board with a tire knocker in his hand. He did not raise it. He simply kept walking until Slate had to plant his feet or backpedal. Behind Slate, the tow strap went tight and shuddered. The dog tried to stand. He could not. Pads were burned to raw meat. He still tried. He crawled to put himself between the Marine and the heat, panting through broken sound. Jack pointed once at the strap. Slate laughed, high and brittle. Teaching a lesson, he said. The kid forgot what interest is. Nobody forgets me. Call the sheriff if you want a number. He did not reach for a phone. He reached into his cab and pulled down a small black radio from the visor. Not a citizen band, not a cheap walkie. County, frequency, channel label worn smooth, his thumb pressed without thinking. Doug, you on. Got a situation at mile marker 41. The old trucker is blocking my lane. That was the first crack of cold inside the heat. Slate did not dial 911. Slate called a man by his first name on a line he should not own. Jack did not look at the radio again. He cut the strap with his pocket knife, slow and careful so the dog would see his hands. The shepherd growled low, almost a whisper, then pushed his nose into Jack's palm. A choice. Trust given in a moment when it hurt to breathe. Jack scooped the Marine first. Too light. Skin a map of road. Lips moving with words from a different country. Perimeter breach. Need evac. Jack carried him to the sleeper and set him on the lower bunk. Back for the dog. The shepherd was heavy and shaking, but he did not fight. He pressed his head against Jack's chest as if the heartbeat meant safety. Jack felt something crack open in there, sharp and clean, like ice breaking on a river. He climbed, eased the dog beside the Marine. The dog lifted his head and began to lick the man's cheek with small, careful strokes. Work to do, Stay alive. Slate stood by his pickup, smile gone. You did not save anyone, he said. You just bought a problem you cannot pay off. He lifted the black radio again. The voice coming through it was flat and official. Hold tight, Conrad, on my way. A thin band of adhesive flapped in the wind on the tow strap left on the pavement. Jack saw the print in red letters. Property of Red Rock County Impound. The strap was not from a hardware store. It had been pulled from a room with a lock and a logbook. He did not argue with a man who had a county channel and county property in his hands. He climbed into the seat, turned the key, let the diesel catch, and set his jaw. Red's last stop sat at the edge of town behind a row of cottonwoods and a bent sign that still promised pie. Red had once been a Navy corpsman. Red did not ask questions while blood was still wet. The rig rolled. Dust rose like smoke behind him. In the sleeper, the Marine's breath fluttered. The dog pressed close and watched Jack in the mirror. Not pleading, measuring, choosing. Jack put the truck in gear and pointed it off the main road, away from the easy turnouts and the clean lines. He did not know why his hands were steady. He only knew what he had seen. A dog that refused to save himself. A line printed in county red where it did not belong. A radio that went to a sheriff's ear like it was a private number. He drove toward the only door he trusted. And behind him, a corruption he could not yet name began to wake up and give chase. Red's last stop was a square of cinder block and stubborn will at the edge of the county. The bay doors were open to heat and dust. Inside, the air turned to iodine and coffee. Red McCarthy took one look and went quiet in the way medics do when they see the whole picture at once. He was small, wiry, sun-baked. The faded anchor on his forearm moved when he snapped on gloves. Table, light, saline. He spoke like orders on a flight deck. Jack, lower bunk into the shop, clear the bench, that lamp, the grey tackle box, no phones on. Evan Miller lay on the metal table, pupils huge, skin glassy with shock. He shook hard, though the day roasted outside. His lips moved, grid numbers, contact calls, words meant for a sky that was not here. Red pressed 2 fingers to the carotid and nodded once. He slid a needle into a vein with hands that had stitched men on ship decks. Small dose, he said. Enough to keep him from fighting us when the pain hits. Stay with me, Marine. Eyes on me. On the floor, the German shepherd watched every move. He was wrecked, footpads gone to red, flank torn raw, but his gaze was bright and fixed. He pulled himself by his elbows to the table leg and set his chin against the Marine's boot. A low sound rolled out of his chest. Not fear. Claim. I am here. Jack knelt with a bucket and saline. He spoke quietly to the dog. He told him what each touch would be before he made it. The shepherd watched his face, and then the hands. He accepted the rinse. He accepted the wrap. When the burn spiked, he leaned into Jack's thigh and breathed through it. When Evan coughed, the dog lifted his head fast, ears cocked, ready to move his whole hurt body to cover the man if he had to. Red cut away what was left of the uniform. Road rash from shoulder to hip. Rope burns patterned around the ribs. He dabbed, washed, packed. He kept talking. Present tense. Simple words. You are not in the sand. You are in my shop. Your dog is here. I am going to clean this. You will hear water and metal. You are safe for the next 60 seconds. Then the next. Jack held gauze and tape. He had changed tires in blizzards and hauled steel across black ice. His hands had always known what to do. They were steady now. The smell of antiseptic filled his head until there was no room left for the house in Ohio. He watched the dog choose calm in pain and felt his own breathing match it. Evan blinked. The focus came in stutters, like a weak radio finding a station. His eyes tracked ceiling. Light. Then Jack. Then down to the shape pressed to his boot. Rex, he rasped. The dog's ears tipped. The name was a rope across a gap. Evan tried to sit. Red set a palm on his sternum. Easy. You took a mile of road. You move when I say. Look at him. He is with you. The young man obeyed because the voice left no room for anything else. Red stepped back to toss bloody gauze, and something flashed on the floor near the cut toe strap. A narrow strip of adhesive with red block letters stuck to it. He picked it up with tweezers, turned it to the light, and whistled low. Property of Red Rock County impound. He looked at the frayed strap, then at the neat rope burns that matched the strap width. He crossed to Evan's wrist. There, under grime, a faint shadow where a hospital-style band had been ripped off. The adhesive. Residue had the same pink film used on county custody tags. Plot twist rose in the room like a change in pressure. This was not a random act in the desert. County gear had been used to chain a veteran to a moving truck. Someone with keys had shopped the closet. Red moved to a metal shelf and pulled down a battered scanner. He kept it for brush fires and wrecks. He clicked to the sheriff band and turned the knob until voices sharpened from a fog of static. Dispatch. Car 1 en route to a wellness check at Red's last stop. Caller is Conrad Slate. Advises subject is violent and in possession of a dangerous animal. Body cams off for officer safety. Red's eyes cut to Jack. Body cams off was not a phrase you hear when people plan to help. He killed the scanner and set it down like a hot pan. He went back to the dog. He checked Rex's gums. Pale, but not white. He slid a small dose of pain med into a vein with a tiny butterfly and spoke to him like he would to a man. This will take the edge off. You did your job. Let me do mine. Rex took the needle with a blink and then lowered his head to Evan's boot again. His tail did not wag. He saved energy. He saved watch. Evan's eyes found Jack and held. You stopped him, he said, voice raw. The truck, the wall. Jack looked away and then back. Could not drive past, he answered. The truth sat between them without decoration. Outside, a single horn bleated somewhere on the highway. The light through the bay door went a deeper orange. Heat shifted. The day was moving. Trouble was, too. Red peeled his gloves and washed to the elbows. He dried his hands and reached for a phone at the back of the office. He dialed without looking. The line clicked. A woman answered crisp and clear. Emily McCarthy, she said. Red watched the toe strap sticker on the tray and kept his voice flat. Kid is a Marine. Name Evan Miller. Dog is a retired K-9. Name Rex. Both alive. Barely. The strap they used came out of county impound. The caller who wants him picked up is Conrad Slate. He paused, then added the part that changed a fight into a case. Sheriff is rolling a wellness check with cams off. There was a beat of silence on the line. Then Emily's voice lost all warmth. Lock your doors, she said. Do not open to anyone without paper. Keep them breathing. I am calling Phoenix and the State Bar, and then I am calling the press that still has a spine. Dad, you always wanted a clean case. This one smells like the whole county. Red looked at Jack. Jack looked at Rex. The dog had closed his eyes but kept his chin against the boot, as if it were his post, and he would be relieved only by death or orders. Jack felt the old sense of useless drift, and watched it burn off like fog under a hard sun. They were not done. They were only now seeing what they had driven into. Evan surfaced like a diver breaking through a cold lake. The bare bulb stung. The smell of alcohol and rubber mats cut through the fog. Rex had his head on Evan's boot, eyes steady, the slow metronome of a guard who would not blink first. Tell me what put you on that road, Red said. Not a cop question. A medic question. Short, contained. Evan's throat worked. He stared at his hands. Then at Rex. The words came in clipped runs, as if he had to push them past a wall. Got out last year. Shrapnel in the head. Sleeps went bad. Daylight, too. Crowds made my skin crawl. He dragged a breath. They said, "Get a dog." I went back to the kennel on base. Met him again. He was washed from the program because he bonds too hard. They did not want that. I did. He looked at Rex. He stopped me from stepping off ledges I could not see. He wakes me before the bad film plays to the end. Red nodded once. Jack listened and felt an old ache move under his ribs. Rex got sick 3 months ago. Evan said, "Twisted stomach. Needs a surgeon now or he dies. 4,000 at intake, another 2 by morning." The VA file was stuck. Insurance said wait. Waiting meant a grave. I went to a clinic that takes cash. The doc saved him. I walked out with a debt that could fill a canyon. He said Slate's name the way men say a poison. Conrad found me outside the clinic. He knew my name. He knew my unit. He knew Rex had a cereal in his old collar. He said he had a vet fund for Marines. "Sign here. Pay a little each week. No credit check." He smiled like a preacher. Red glanced at Jack. They both knew that smile. It was not a loan. It was a trap. Evan said, "Fees I never saw. Interest added every day before breakfast. If I paid, it doubled. If I missed, it tripled. I fell behind in 2 weeks. He sent a boy to my place. Broke a chair. Broke my door. Said I was an example in waiting. The next time they came, they had a county boot and a toe strap with a red sticker." He swallowed hard. "They told me to watch my dog learn what asphalt tastes like. They tied us together so we could." He blinked fast like the light hurt. Rex tried to climb me when the truck moved. He would not get off. He covered my face when the road went bad. He thought he could hold the whole world back with his chest. In the silence that followed, Rex lifted his eyes to Evans and then to Jack, as if to say it was not heroics. It was his job. Red hit speaker on the office phone. Emily's voice filled the shop, compact and steady. "I pulled Slate's filings. He runs a finance outfit that flips names every 6 months. He also chairs a non-profit called Valor Home. That is a front. It routes cash through a pawn chain and a title shop. He launders money from small casinos outside the reservation. He buys loyalty in the courthouse with donations and favors. Sheriff Doug Harlan sits on the Valor Home Advisory Board. So do 2 supervisors and a judge who signs emergency orders after hours. Their last fundraiser honored K-9 teams. Pictures are on the county site. Slate had keys to the kennel. He had the K-9 retirement roster. That is how he knew the dog. That is how he knew you." Evan closed his eyes like the wind had been knocked from him again. Jack felt his jaw set. This was not a bad man with a truck. This was a system that ate the weak by calling it help. Emily kept going. "There are other names. 2 farm families that lost land after loans from Slate. A mechanic who vanished and left a note about debt. 3 vets charged in quick arraignments where Harlan swore they were a danger. All 3 had dogs. All 3 dogs were destroyed as aggressive before counsel could object." She let the weight of it land. "This is not about you alone, Evan. This is policy in everything but paper." Red pinched the bridge of his nose. The scanner at his elbow crackled and then went quiet again. Jack watched Evan flinch at the sound and saw his son for a split second at 22 laughing in a garage with grease on his cheek. Memory hit like a fist. Jack breathed through it and looked at Rex. The dog was watching him with a human steadiness, as if he knew that grief had just licked bone. There was a new detail hung at the edge of Evan's story, bright as a shard in sand. He frowned at it, then reached for the ripped uniform shirt folded on a chair. He tugged a pocket flap. Inside, taped sloppy and fast, sat a cheap thumb drive in clear plastic. "Slate made me sign on a tablet." Evan said. He liked showing me how easy it was. "I snapped a shot of the contract on my phone before they took it. Later, I backed it up here because the room felt wrong. It lists a county liaison. It is not Harlan. It is his undersheriff. Name Keller. There is also a clause that assigns disputed property to Valor Home for immediate resale. That is how he takes houses. That is how he takes dogs. The words came out flat. He had found the missing gear in the machine that chewed him. Red's eyebrows went up. That is your twist, kid. That is paper that moves men in suits. Emily, you get that, and we have a shot to cut this line at the post. Already on my way, Emily said. And listen to me now. You cannot let Harlan touch him. If they get Evan into county custody, they move him to a psych hold and he vanishes in paperwork for 72 hours. Rex goes to animal control and is gone by morning. They have done it before. I can call state and federal, but it will take time. Buy me that time. Jack looked at Evan. The Marine looked at Rex. Love and terror sat side by side on his face. Jack felt something settled that had been floating since Ohio. If he walked away now, it would not be neutral. It would be cowardice. We buy it, Jack said. We buy every minute she needs. He put his hand on Rex's head. The dog leaned into it and closed his eyes for a blink, then opened them and watched the door. He knew where the next danger would come from. Red opened a drawer and took out a steel key. Back room, trapdoor. If we have to, we go down and out through the old drainage. No one but me knows it is there. He slid the key across the bench. Jack caught it. The choice was made. The shape of the fight had changed. Not a rescue in a storm, a stand in a county that thought it owned the weather. Dusk turned the bay door into a sheet of bronze. The dust outside thickened and lifted like a living thing. Headlights cut through it in 3 hard lines. A black pickup. 2 SUVs riding heavy. Then the county cruiser slid into place across the mouth of the drive. The yard felt smaller by half. Red clicked the deadbolt on the side door. Jack stepped into the throat of the shop and planted his boots, tire knocker in his fist. Behind him, the back room door stood half open. Evan on the table. Rex on the floor, awake now, pulling himself until his shoulder touched the Marine's boot again. Conrad Slate came first. Clean shirt, new smile. He put his hands out like a man who had forgiven everyone. Sheriff Harlan followed, large and flushed. His palm rode the butt of his sidearm as if it were a habit he did not know he had. A young deputy hovered behind them. Luis Alvarez. The kid carried his badge like it was heavier than his belt. Evening, gentlemen, Slate said. That boy assaulted me, stole a significant sum, and fled with my property. I called for help. He peered around Jack like a nosy neighbor. This is a simple wellness check. Harlan nodded and set his jaw. Step aside. We have to verify the subject is stable. I am taking the animal for public safety. That dog is a risk. Rex lifted his head. He did not bark. He did not bare teeth. He looked at Harlan with a steady, ancient patience that made the room feel like a church. Evan's hand found the ruff at his neck and settled there, the way a drowning man finds the edge of a boat. No paper, no entry. Red said from the counter. His voice was calm. His eyes were not. Harlan's face reddened another shade. This is a legal welfare check. Body cams off. Officer discretion. He took a step. Red held up his phone and pressed a button. The speaker caught a clear voice. Emily McCarthy, civil rights attorney. I am recording. Sheriff Harlan, you are attempting entry without a warrant into a private shop to seize a wounded veteran and a certified service animal. That violates federal disability law and state due process. You are also on notice that any interference with medical care already in progress will be treated as battery. Harlan blinked. His eyes slid to Slate. Slate spread his hands again. Sheriff, do your job. Emily's voice did not rise. Americans with Disabilities Act. Section 1983 Civil Rights Actions. Interference with a service animal. False pretense wellness checks. Pick any 3. If you cross that threshold without a warrant, I will have the Attorney General on the line before you get to your cruiser. Your advisory board seat at Valor Home will not save you. That last line hit like a dropped wrench. Harlan's chin jerked. The room went quiet enough to hear the electric hum of the lamp. Alvarez shifted his weight. His left hand hovered near his own body cam. His right thumb tapped the housing. It clicked. A small, red light winked alive near his collar. Not off. On. Sheriff, he said softly. Maybe we step back and do this right. Paper first. We can request emergency authorization if she is wrong. But if she is right, we are on the hook for everything. He swallowed. His eyes flicked to Rex. He saw the wrap, the raw pads, the way the dog refused to leave the post. Sir, that is a service dog. He is task-trained. He is not a bite risk here. Harlan stared at the little red light as if it had grown there by itself. He turned his shoulder to block Slate's view and hissed, I told you. Cams down. Alvarez did not move. Emily did. Deputy, she said. Your name and badge number are on my recording. Thank you for your professionalism. If the sheriff orders you to disable an accountability device during a welfare check, that is its own problem for his counsel. Slate's smile cracked. He pushed forward. You are all missing the obvious? He jabbed a finger at the back room. That dog nearly killed me. The boy is unhinged. The county impound lists them as dangerous. He said it too fast. He said it like a man who had said that line before. Red's eyebrows lifted. County impound. Interesting choice of words, Conrad. Almost like you have the inventory. He slid a small tray across the counter. On it, the narrow strip of pink adhesive with red letters. Property of Red Rock County Impound. The light caught it and made the letters jump. Harlan saw it and went rigid. Get your men back to the road, Conrad. He muttered. Now. Slate leaned in to hiss through his teeth. Do not pucker now. You promised this would be simple. You promised me a dog and a lesson. Rex rose to his elbows. His gaze never left Slate. It was not a growl. It was not a bark. It was the kind of sound a door makes when something heavy leans against it. Slate stopped talking. Jack felt the weight of the knocker in his palm and set it down on the bench. He lifted both hands. Open. There will be no fight here, he said to the sheriff. There will be a warrant or there will be a lawsuit. I will stand in front of that door until either arrives. Alvarez cleared his throat. Sheriff, dispatch just pinged. He looked at his phone and went a shade paler. The AG's switchboard logged a complaint with our case number. Media desk has an inquiry. He lifted his eyes. Sir, we need to leave. Harlan stared at the floor. He looked at the tray again. He looked at Slate, who was beginning to sweat in the cooling air. The sheriff swallowed something hard and backed up one step. Then another. This is not over, he said. Do not leave town. Do not move the subject. He turned to go. Words shot over his shoulder like gravel. We will be back with paper. Slate stayed a beat longer. He placed both palms on the hood of Red's old Chevy as if to mark it with his hands. He looked at Jack. You think you saved him. You did not. He belongs to me. This county belongs to me. He smiled, but the shine was gone. He got into his truck and left a strip of rubber like a scar. Engines receded. Dust drifted down. The shop breathed again. Jack let his shoulders drop. Evan exhaled in a broken sigh. Rex sank to the floor, then pushed his nose back to the boot, eyes still on the door. He had done his job without moving 2 feet. Red killed the speaker and dialed before the silence could harden. Emily, he said. They blinked. The young one turned his cam on. He is not rotten to the core. The sticker landed. Slate slipped. We have county property in play? And the sheriff flinched when Valorhome came up. Good, Emily said. Hold tight. They will shop a judge. You will not see the last of them tonight. But the record is ours now. And Red. The deputy, Alvarez. If he wants out, he is our bridge inside. Red looked at Jack. Jack looked at Rex. The dog had not closed his eyes. He watched the gap under the door like a soldier at a breach. Night deepened. The bay glowed a dull gold. The war had changed shape. They were still inside the first hour, but the next move would not be the sheriff's alone. Red slid the bay door down and through the heavy bar. The shop fell into a hush that made small sounds loud. The tick of the cooling engine, Evan's rough breath, the soft, deliberate pant of a dog who refused to sleep on duty. Emily called back. The courtroom steel was still in her voice, but something warmer had come forward. "You are not alone," she said. "We call it the Guardian Line. Lawyers, medics, ranchers, a few stubborn truckers who owe us favors. We move people when the paper turns dirty. I have a placement, Montana, Eagle Creek Haven, run by Dana Cole, former ranger. Off-grid, cameras on trees, fences that don't look like fences. It is built for men like Evan and dogs like Rex." Jack glanced at the map on the wall. Arizona to Montana was a long pull in good conditions. This would be something else entirely. "No airports," Emily said. "No bus depots. No cards. Slate will have flags on every system by morning. He watched you stall him. He will make calls all night. If you choose to move, you move now." Red was already at the safe. He lifted a sealed pouch onto the counter. Cash. Paper maps with red pencil routes arced through canyons tourists never see. A prepaid cell still in plastic. He added a small roll of electrical tape and a razor blade. "For the wires you will cut before you roll," he said. Evan swung his legs off the table and had to stop, white to the lips. Red slid a shot under his skin and counted backwards with him until his shoulders loosened. When the wave passed, Evan looked at Jack. It was the look a man gives another when he has run out of pride and kept only the truth. "You owe me nothing," he said. "I can hobble to the door and buy time so he doesn't take you down, too." Jack shook his head. Too late for that kind of math. He looked at Rex instead. The dog held his gaze. He did not wag. He did not look away. He simply placed a paw, wrapped in clean white, on Jack's boot. It landed like a signature. "I'll take you," Jack said. "I owe my boy one rescue I can finish." Red wrapped Rex's feet again, extra gauze where the pads were gone. The dog did not flinch. He saved his strength for the climb. Red checked Evan's bandages, slid a pill bottle into Jack's palm, and tucked the burner into his vest. He reached across the counter, and their handshake was tight and dry, two old sailors in different uniforms. "From now on, you're a shepherd on 18 wheels," Red said. "Keep eyes on your herd and on your six." They went to the lot. Night had drained the last heat from the wind. Jack backed the Peterbilt until the sleeper door kissed the bay threshold. Less time exposed. Fewer steps to fail. He lifted Rex first, careful and sure, 100 pounds of belief pressed against his chest. The dog groaned once and then locked it down, head pressed to Jack's heart like that sound could set a cadence. Evan climbed with Red under his elbow. He did not let go of the dog when he sat. Rex slid his chin to Evan's knee and went still. Jack killed the cab lights and popped the panel under the wheel. He pulled the ELD fuse, snapped the antenna off the GPS puck, and taped the leads back so they would not arc. He had been quiet for 3 years. He remembered how to go dark in 30 seconds. A shadow reached the wheel well. Rex's head came up fast, ears pricked. He stared at the front axle and gave a single, low chuff. Jack followed the stare and went to his knees. His fingers found a smooth oval stuck like a barnacle to the frame. Magnet, warm from use. He pried it free. A tiny red diode winked defiance. "They tagged you at the way station last month," Red said. "Or tonight, while we were busy yelling at the sheriff." He held out the razor. "Choice is yours. Trash it or gift it." Jack turned the tracker in his palm and then looked at the junk field beyond the fence. He jogged into the dark, and slid the device inside the frame of an abandoned flatbed with county stickers still ghosted on the paint. If someone wanted to follow a signal, they could follow it to a pile of rust and stories. Back in the cab, Jack rolled forward just enough to clear the bay door. Red raised the panel a hand's width and held it there. The shop stayed dark. So did the rig. Only the running lights bled a thin amber at the corners. "Wait," Emily said in Jack's ear. Her voice was a notch lower. "One more thing. Luis Alvarez just texted me from a number I gave him years ago for whistleblowers. Judge Keller is on call and friendly to Slate. They will try an emergency seizure order within the hour, alleging danger to the public. Plate readers on the highway are hot for your Ohio tags. Alvarez slid a note on your file that your rig is in need of service and off-road for the night. It will buy you a little air. He is better than he knows how to be." Red smiled without humor. "There's your twist. The kid is a crack in the wall." "Time to go," Jack said. They took the shop's back way. Narrow ribbon of gravel Red's tires had pressed hard over years. It skirted the cottonwoods and slid into the utility right-of-way, like a thought no one said out loud. Jack kept it under 20. No headlights. The dash glow turned down until the gauges were ghosts. The county road opened ahead, then bent toward the long dark of the desert. Jack did not take it. He turned instead onto a maintenance track that ran the back of a dry wash. The rig rocked, slow and sure. In the sleeper, Evan braced one hand on the wall and one on the dog. He did not complain. He breathed in on the bumps and out on the smooth and let Rex's weight anchor him to the now. Red's shop shrank in the mirror and then disappeared. Jack felt the old hum come back into his bones, not the empty one that drowned out grief, but a live current that carried purpose. The desert widened. The sky emptied of town light until it held more stars than a man could keep. He kept his hands light on the wheel and his eyes cutting long. Behind him, the Marine and the dog breathed the same rhythm. Ahead of him, a thin white road threaded out of the reach of men who confused power for right. He did not pray. He did not promise. He drove. And in the space where fear wanted to live, a German shepherd lay quiet and vigilant, ears turned to every new sound, guarding a man and the miles still to come. For the first 50 miles, the night held. No headlights locked on their tail. No siren cut the stars. Jack kept the big rig in the dark band between fence lines, avoiding every reader and camera he knew by muscle memory. The ELD was silent. The GPS was a dead puck in the glove box. 2 burner phones sat in a coffee can under the bunk. Evan slept, and startled, and slept again. Rex stayed half awake, nose pressed to his boot, ears flicking at each new sound. Near the state line, the road opened into a long, shallow valley. Jack risked the CB, volume low. The static hissed, then resolved into late-shift chatter. Scale open at mile 42, smoky at the split by the rock church. He was about to switch it off when a voice he did not know came in clean and slow, like a man reading a menu. Break 19 for a message. 10 grand for the first driver to call in eyes on a red Peterbilt 389, Ohio tags. Operator goes by bear. Package may include a fugitive and a dangerous animal. Cash money. No questions. Repeat. 10 grand. Call Conrad. Silence swelled in the cab. Then the channel lit like a slot machine. 10 large? You kidding? Saw a red Pete at the Sinclair an hour back. Got a name on the road. Bear used to pull steel, right? You boys keep your eyes peeled. The laugh that followed had teeth. Jack clicked the radio off with his thumb. He felt Evan looking at him. Evan's face had color again. The sedation had thinned. The Marine had come up through the pain like a swimmer. He did not ask if he had heard right. He had. They just made every mile a hunting ground. Evan said. He adjusted his seat, braced his ribs, and set his gaze in the mirror. I take right glass and the blind spot behind the stacks. You take left. If they try to box us, we need shoulder room. Rex rose on his elbows, tested his wraps against the floor, and balanced his weight in a way that kept pressure off the raw pads. He looked out into the dark, as if a scent might show itself on the wind through a closed window. Jack reached back, pressed a hand once to the thick fur at his neck. The dog leaned in. Anchor thrown. Ready. They saw the next trap coming long before it built. The interstate ahead narrowed for construction. Barrels forced trucks into 2 lanes with concrete on both sides. A perfect funnel. Headlights gathered. Shapes shifted in the mirrors like sharks drawn to chum. Jack did not take the funnel. He eased off before the merge and let the rig roll onto a county spur he had driven once in a hailstorm. The sign was rusted to the color of dried blood. No trespassing. Mining road. Use at own risk. The Peterbilt dropped off the smooth into broken rock. The steering wheel kicked. Jack set his jaw and fed it steady hands. Branches slapped the mirrors. Gravel spit at the tanks. The frame groaned, then dug in like a bull under load. Pain hit Evan in a hot wave when the rig pitched hard left. He crashed against the door and tasted copper. He forced the breath back down where it belonged. "I am good," he said, lying with the sincerity of men who have had to. Rex barked once, sharp, a little too loud in the tight cab, then swallowed the sound and rested his chin back on Evan's knee like an apology. His eyes never left the windshield. Behind them, faint and far, a set of headlights rolled past the mouth of the spur. No brake lights, no curiosity. The Bounty would not drag every trucker off the highway into a goat trail. Some would take a safer bet. Others would decide this was not their blood to make. The mining road climbed. It twisted along a wash cut by winter floods and neglect. Twice Jack had to put the nose into scrub and back to keep from high centering the frame. Twice Evan said left 2 inches in a voice that did not shake and saved a mirror. Rex watched the floor for the first hitch of a rattle. He had spent enough time near engines to know the sound that meant a belt just died or a bracket quit. The track leveled on a shoulder of pine and granite. A square, dark shape appeared ahead, set back from the road. One window, a porch barely holding up its own roof. A sign nailed crooked that once read, "Forest Service." The little shack looked abandoned until a dome of cold blue flickered behind it and then winked out. Not abandoned. Parked. Jack lifted his foot. The rig coasted to walking speed. A figure stepped from the shadow of the porch into the wash of the running lights. Deputy Luis Alvarez, hat brim low, hand near his belt but not on his weapon. The night went very still in the cab. Evan's fingers closed on Rex's ruff. The dog gathered himself without, standing. He was as quiet as a breath held under water. Alvarez raised a hand. Not flat like a stop. Palm out, a hello. His eyes moved to the plates, then the hood, then the man at the wheel. He saw Jack and blinked once. His gaze slid to the passenger seat. He saw the cut bandages at the Marine's throat. He saw the dog. He looked down at his own chest cam. A red dot glowed. He tapped it. The light went dark. He took 2 steps closer so his voice did not have to carry. "I did 4 in uniform before the badge," he said. "Afghanistan, the valley with no good exits." He glanced at Rex. "That one is trained. He is doing his job. He is not your problem. He is your map." Jack held his breath and then let it out when he saw the deputy's shoulders loosen by a fraction. Alvarez's eyes came back to Jack's. "Up ahead, this road splits," he said. "The right goes to a washout. The left skirts it and climbs to a fire break. Stay on the ridge until you hit the old power line. There is a cattle gate. It is chained but not locked. Push through. In 10 miles the track drops to County 33. Plate readers are dead up there. If anyone asks what I saw tonight, I saw elk." Evan stared at him. "Why?" he asked. There was no accusation in it, only a need to understand the world for a second more. Alvarez swallowed. Because I remember the guy who grabbed my vest when the blast went off. Because my kid brother loves a German shepherd that sleeps on his bed. Because some days you choose who you are in one sentence, and then you live with it. He took a step back and raised his hand again. This time it was clearly a wave through. Rex lifted his head, and, for the first time in hours, let his tail thump once against the bunk. Not a celebration, an acknowledgement. He read the man the way dogs do. He allowed him into the circle of those who would not harm his person. Jack eased the rig past at idle. Alvarez kept his eyes on the trees, a lookout on a wall he had decided to guard alone. As the taillights brushed the edge of the clearing, the deputy spoke without turning. "Do not let them put cuffs on you," he said. "If they do, they will put you where I cannot reach. Keep moving." They took the left split. The road narrowed to a tongue of dirt over rock. The big diesel worked, steady and deep, hauling them into a dark even the stars did not touch. Behind them, back at the shack, a single blue blink returned, then died. A report written, a choice made. The bounty still hummed on 1,000 radios. The sheriff was dialing judges in kitchens. Slate was breaking crystal on a counter and promising men cash for deeds. But up on the ridge, the only sounds were pine needles rubbing in the wind and a dog breathing like a metronome set to the speed of hope. By the time the mountains opened, the sky had gone the deep, hard blue that belongs to Montana alone. The air cut clean. Pines stacked the hillsides like ranks. Jack eased the rig off a county lane onto a narrow dirt track that seemed to disappear between lodgepole and fir. A steel gate slid back without a hand on it. Solar cameras winked on trunks. The ranch did not announce itself. It let the worthy arrive. Eagle Creek Haven sat on a rise above cold water. Cabins of rough timber, a low barn, a long shed with frosted windows that hummed like a quiet hospital. Dana Cole waited by a dusted jeep with her arms crossed. Short hair, rope muscle, a thin white scar that ran from jaw to collar like a map of where she had been. Jack parked so the sleeper faced the clinic door. He killed the engine. Silence came down heavy. Dana took one look in the cab and started calling the dance without raising her voice. Vet bay now, saline warm, silver sulfadiazine. 2 sets of hands and a muzzle we will not need. She reached for Evan's wrist and found his pulse with a steadiness that made his shoulders drop a fraction. "You are safe. You will feel pain but not surprise. We do not ambush here." Rex let Jack lift him. He did not fight it. He saved his breath for what mattered. On the table, the vet techs cut the wraps and started over. Warm rinse, debridement, cream, clean gauze, padding taped neat as parade lines. They wrapped the tailbase where the road had burned it. When the pain spiked, Rex set his teeth on a towel and looked for Evan. The Marine leaned in, forehead to forehead. The dog relaxed by degrees. The techs watched and worked inside the quiet of that trust. Evan's turn came next. X-rays showed cracked ribs that had not shifted, a deep bruise along the hip, rope burns that would scar no matter how gentle the ointment. Dana read the films and set him on a plan. Pain control to function, not to float. Sleep protocol. Morning chores that did not break. He tried to joke. She did not take the bait. You do not need to be interesting here. You need to heal. Outside, the place ran like a small base, a corral where a paint horse stood as still as a deacon, a round pen, a rack of saddles tuned to different bodies, a fire ring stacked with river rock and split larch. Men and women moved in a way that said they had learned to keep their backs to walls for years and now were practicing not to. They nodded to Evan. A small nod back. That was enough. Jack stood on the porch, hands in his jacket, watching how the ranch breathed. He was a driver. He understood rhythm. Eagle Creek had one. Work, rest, check in, repeat. It got into his bones the way the highway hum did, but without the hole in the middle. The phone under Dana's belt buzzed. She glanced. Then she passed it to Emily on speaker, crisp and fast from Phoenix. The net was already pulling tight. Red had sworn an affidavit with photos of the impound sticker. Alvarez had left a statement in a Dropbox with his cam sync. The file contained audio from the garage no one thought survived. A moment in which Conrad Slate said the quiet part loud. "That dog nearly killed me. The county impound lists them as dangerous. We use the kennel all the time." Put Slate in the kennel with the keys. It put the county in his pocket. Emily's voice flattened. "I have 3 families calling me back with stories that read the same. Emergency orders signed after midnight by Judge Keller. Sheriff Harlan attesting danger. Valor Home receiving title on disputed assets within 72 hours. One of those assets was a farmhouse. One was a truck yard. One was a K-9 euthanized at dawn. We will not let that pattern repeat. I have the state AG's civil rights unit on a parallel track and a U.S. attorney who just asked for copies." Dana's mouth twitched at the name Keller. The ranch had seen his work before. She turned to Evan. "You are about to be more than a patient. You are evidence. So is that dog. We will keep you alive long enough to speak." A boot scraped the porch. Jack turned. A woman in a faded county clerk jacket stood by the rail, cap in her hands. She had the look of someone who had slept in her car. She had driven dirt to avoid being seen. Dana nodded to her like an old comrade. "Ms. Pierce, meet the folks you wanted to meet." Claire Pierce had worked in the clerk's office for 8 years. She kept the seal. She printed orders. 2 months back, she had handled a packet from Keller's chambers with 3 emergency seizures in one night. All had the same boilerplate language. All had blank lines that were later filled in by a hand that was not Keller's. Claire had copied the template to a thumb drive because something in her stomach would not let it go. Last week, her supervisor told her to delete old files. The folder was gone by morning. She had brought a copy here instead. Slide across the grainy wood. A simple file, a new shape in the case. Evan held the drive between 2 fingers like a fuse. His eyes had that far stare again, but the edges were different. Not panic, resolve. He passed it to Jack. Jack passed it to Dana. Dana walked it to a safe. Metal on metal. Click. The Guardian line drew another ring. Out by the corrals, a vet with a Boston accent called Evan over to the rails. He showed him a mare that took a step only when the rope went slack. He explained how to breathe at the same speed as a prey animal, so both hearts stop bracing. Evan tried. The mare blinked and stepped. Something tight in his shoulders let go 1 notch. Rex watched from the shade, ears forward, finally chewing a little at a strip of dried elk. He looked up each time Evan exhaled like he was counting with him. Night found them at the fire ring. Coffee. Broth. No questions unless a man offered one. Jack sat with his back to a log and listened to stories that did not dig for pain, but acknowledged it when it rose. A Navy corpsman talked about the sound of metal on a ship skin after dark. A former MP talked about learning how to let the door to a grocery store close behind her without turning. Dinah stood and spoke to all of them at once without saying it. The line is moving. Slate called his donors. Harlan called Keller. We called the people who can make it stop. But paper takes hours. We have set watchers on the road. If a county unit turns off the lane, we will know long before it finds the gate. Until then, you are home. In the clinic, Rex slept with his nose to the door. He woke only when Evan woke. He drank when Evan drank. He rested when Evan's breath slowed. The dog had logged 1,000 new smells since dawn and weighed them all, cataloguing threat and comfort without words. He decided this place was a post. He took it. Jack stepped off the porch into the cold and called Red. They spoke without saying much, the way men do when the work is not done. He slid the postcard from Evan's tray into his vest pocket for a second and then put it back. No souvenirs. The road still had teeth. Inside, Emily sent a final text. The U.S. attorney had approved a preservation order for county records. DOJ had requested Harlan's emails with Valor home. A journalist with a spine had taken a call and asked for on-the-record statements. The first cracks in Red Rock were not just whispers now. They were in writing. Montana's cold settled clean. The stars showed up like witnesses. In a cabin where the heater ticked, a Marine lay with his hand on his dog's ribcage and counted, 1 to 4, in and out, until sleep took him without a fight. Outside, a trucker stood with his palm on the hood of an engine that had hauled more than freight and knew he would drive again when the line needed him. Sometimes justice starts as a paper cut. Sometimes it starts as a gate that opens to the right people. Sometimes it starts as a dog that refuses to yield his post until the world remembers what a promise looks like. Winter gave way to a hard spring, and in Montana the air sharpened like a fresh blade. Days settled into a rhythm that did not ask for stories. Evan rose in the blue hour and fed hay with the other men, a wool cap pulled down over his ears. He learned the sound a horse makes when it trusts you with the space behind its shoulder. He learned to breathe to a count and then to no count at all. Some mornings his hands shook when he laced his boots. Those mornings, Dana sent him to the round pen with the paint mare and told him to walk until his heartbeat stopped looking for exits. Rex's paws grew new leather. The bandages came off one by one. He tested each foot like a man testing a bridge plank, then pushed into a slow trot that looked like prayer answered. Once the vet cleared him, the dog chose a job and did it without being told. He lay beside the circle where a Marine from Fallujah sat stiff on a bench and stared at the dirt until the bench disappeared. When the man's breath sped up, Rex pressed his shoulder to his shin and leaned. When a former army medic's hands went cold and numb for no reason at all, Rex nudged her wrist until she found the ground through his fur. He never made a show of it. He was not performing tricks. He was returning men and women to the room one touch at a time. Evenings, the fire ring filled with a low murmur and the occasional laugh that sounded like a gate opening. Evan talked more with his eyes than his mouth, but one night he set a worn collar on the bench and told the story of the road in short, true sentences. He did not embellish the hurt, and he did not polish the grace. When he finished, he rested a hand on the collar. Rex put his paw on top of it and left it there. The circle held steady around the two of them like a well-built wall. Arizona moved on a parallel track, with none of Montana's gentleness. Emily worked nights that bled into dawns. Alvarez sat in an unlit office 2 doors down from Harlan's and copied what the county called junk, a string of emails with subject lines like welfare check template and Valor disbursement, a spreadsheet that listed case numbers and kennel intake times in the same column as emergency orders, 2 bodycam files that had been misfiled under equipment testing, which caught Slate entering the impound after hours with a key he did not possess on paper. Emily tucked each piece into a federal drive, her voice flat and surgical when she briefed the U.S. Attorney's team. The first warrant hit before the monsoon. Federal agents in windbreakers walked past the marble seal in the county courthouse like it was a prop. Slate's office door opened on the second knock. He tried the same smile he'd worn at Red's, but it lived only on his mouth. They set him in cuffs with a gentleness that read like contempt. Usury, wire fraud, conspiracy, laundering through a charitable entity, aggravated assault on a veteran, attempted cruelty to animals. He blinked long and slow at each count, as if he could delay them by not bringing them into focus. Harlan's arrest was uglier. He blustered on the steps, called it politics, barked at Alvarez to turn in his badge. Alvarez handed over his gun and shield without looking at him. The agents read out misuse of office, tampering with evidence, civil rights violations under color of law. Harlan tried to square his shoulders and found they would not square. Cameras caught it. The county's morning show played the clip between weather and sports, the volume too high for the time of day. There was a moment that would stay with the people who had watched Slate parade power for years. On the courthouse curb, a slot where county units load prisoners for transport gaped like a mouth. Slate hesitated at the door of the van. The deputy guiding him tugged the chain with a practiced motion to hurry him along, and Slate stumbled. His polished shoe skidded on grit. For half a heartbeat his body dragged forward inelegantly, pulled by the weight he had never expected to wear. Cameras clicked. The irony did not crow. It just recorded. Back on the road, Jack was hauling a stack of container frames across the Dakotas when Red called. It was short. "They got him," Red said. "Slate's in cuffs. Harlan, too." Keller resigned and crawled under counsel. Alvarez is under protection. Felt wrong to cheer. Feels right to breathe. Jack did not raise his voice. He shut down his engine on a wind-scarred turnout and sat with the heat ticking in the dash. The silence that had once felt like punishment spread around him, but it did not press. He thought of a postcard that had lived flat over his heart for the first 1,000 miles north. He thought of his boy on a summer day, the laughter that could fill a garage. He let out a long, slow breath that found the bottom of his lungs for the first time in years. The wind pushed the rig lightly and let go, as if the land itself had exhaled with him. In Montana, a counselor stepped out of the clinic and told Evan the news in simple words. Evan said nothing. He crouched, rested his forehead on Rex's, and let the little tremor in his jaw run its course. He did not need Slate to hurt to heal. But knowing the hands that tied the rope would be counted in a ledger other than his scars loosened, something that had been cinched too tight to name. There were loose ends. There always are. Property had to be returned or paid for. Families had to be seen, and not just logged. The county had to learn that wellness does not arrive with a battering ram. The federal case would drag through a year of filings. The new sheriff would say the right words, and then have to live them at 3 a.m. on a dark street. But the motion had changed direction. The wheel that had ground meat from the poor and the broken had met friction and heat. That night, snow clustered in the grass, even though the calendar said spring. Evan stood at the fence line with a mug. Rex leaned against him from knee to boot, his weight a comfortable burden. Jack's rig ran west under a sky that had more stars than towns. Emily shut down a laptop in a hotel room and stared at the ceiling until her eyes fell closed on their own. Alvarez, in a borrowed apartment, watched his sleeping toddler and decided that some days the cost of doing a right thing is simply a new kind of fear. The scars did not vanish. They rarely do. But they began to change color, to knit into something that could be carried without splitting. On the wind that combed the tops of the lodgepole pines, a dog lifted his head and drew in a long, slow breath, as if cataloguing it for the first summer he would enjoy without pain. He did not bark. He did not announce. He stood his post beside his person and owned the quiet he had earned. 6 months later, the desert air around Red's last stop tasted like hot iron and coffee. The bay door was up. The same old bell on the frame rattled when Jack stepped inside. Red looked up from a carburetor, wiped his hands, and slid a postcard across the scarred counter without a word. The front showed a blue lake and teeth of white mountains. The back carried neat block letters and a small smudge where the ink had caught. Jack, ribs healed. Rex runs on snow now. We are helping people like us. Thank you for not driving on like everyone else. I&R Jack read it twice. He traced the initials with his thumb, then tucked the card into the inside pocket of his vest beside the photo of his boy. The picture and the card sat together like two pieces that finally shared a frame. He felt a quiet settle in his chest that was not the old emptiness. It was weight, but the kind a man chooses to carry. Red poured him coffee that tasted like road grit and history. "You hear about Alvarez?" Red said, voice low. He took a state investigator slot. Civil division. Not a badge in Red Rock anymore, a different kind of badge in Phoenix. Man took heat and did not melt. Jack nodded. The case had grown new branches since the arrests. Bank accounts froze in the middle of the day. A storage unit on the edge of town turned out to be a file room Slate kept for things he could not risk at the office. Inside a plastic tub, under car titles and old invoices, they found a kennel log stamped with intake times and a note pinned to a page that read, "In Slate's own hand, do not release." A dog name had been crossed out. The line below carried another name, Rex. The photo made Jack grip the edge of the counter until his knuckles went pale. Legacy did not always mean monuments. Sometimes it meant a piece of paper you kept from being used again. The shop phone rang. Red answered, listened, and handed it over. Emily's voice came through with a tired brightness that meant she had not slept much but liked the reason. "I have something in your line," she said. "A former army linguist near Farmington. Lives alone with a Dutch shepherd named Cairo. Cairo pulled her out of a house fire last year. She fell behind on a title loan when the contractor stiffed her on repairs. Same network. Different logo. A private tow company is circling her block like vultures. She has a protection order hearing on Tuesday. If they hook her truck before then, she loses work, and the dog loses vet care. I can hold paper at the courthouse. I cannot hold a hook on a street at 2 a.m. Jack looked through the bay to the lot where his rig sat square and clean. The sun had lit the chrome until it looked like water. He did not hesitate. "Send the address," he said. "I am empty and pointed south by noon." There was a beat of silence on the line. Emily exhaled. "You saved one kid and his dog and decided that was not enough," she said, and there was a smile in it. "Welcome to the roster, Bear." Red was already moving. He slid a canvas bag across the counter. Cash. Folded paper maps with pencil marks that curved through the high desert. A list of sheriff dispatch numbers for 2 counties where the deputies still answered the phone like neighbors. He added a small tin. Inside lay a short stack of dog tags on chains. Not from one person. From many. Red met Jack's eyes. Men and women who passed through and left a thank you heavy enough to keep. Tie one to your mirror. Leave the rest in your pocket until the day you know where they belong. Jack chose one without reading the name. He looped it on the mirror in the cab and let it hang beside the small wooden cross his boy had carved in shop class. When the engine fired, the tag clicked once against the wood and then went quiet, as if they had agreed on a rhythm. Before he pulled out, the lot filled with a low rumble that was not his engine. A faded Freightliner rolled in and parked nose to nose with the Peterbilt. The driver climbed down. She was in her 50s, hair braided tight, sleeves rolled, hands like rope. Name patch read Torres. She stuck out a hand, no fuss. "Red called and said you were headed for New Mexico," she said. "I have 10 pallets for Las Cruces on a rush. I can block a lane or open one, whatever you need. You take the shepherd run. I take the heat if it shows." It was a small twist in a long story, but it shifted the load. Jack smiled with his eyes. "That dog tag of yours," he said, nodding to the string on her mirror. She tapped it with a knuckle. "My brother's," she said. "He kept me alive before he left. Now I pay it forward." They topped off tanks and checked tires. Red stood in the door with his shoulders filling the frame. He did not offer advice. He did not need to. Jack eased the rig onto the highway. The bell on the bay clattered once and went still. The miles unrolled. Grain fields, a long, low mesa, a thunderhead that built like a cathedral, and then sheared away in sun. Somewhere in the flats he stopped at a pull-out and took the postcard from his pocket. He looked at the lake, until the blue on the card matched the blue overhead. He thought about Evan teaching someone else how to breathe in a round pen. He pictured Rex pacing a perimeter and decided that the dog would never call it that. He would just call it his person and his ground. Emily texted an address and a time. Farmington, after dark. She added a detail that made Jack rub a thumb over the steering wheel without knowing he had done it. The woman's dog wears a vest when she has to go to town. People stare. Cairo licks the hand of anyone who asks right before they think to ask. He brings her back to earth when the fire alarms in her head start up again. Jack drove on. The sun burned down into a long red bar. The road turned the color of old brick. His shadow stretched out ahead and then folded under as the light went. He did not think about how far he had to go or how little he could change. He kept the speed where it would not draw eyes. He listened for the old noise and found a different one. It sounded like purpose shaking itself out and taking a seat in the passenger side. When the first stars came up, he touched the dog tag on the mirror once and let it swing. Somewhere to the north, a German shepherd stood in new snow and barked not at danger but at joy. Somewhere to the south, a Dutch shepherd waited by a door and knew the sound of a truck that had not yet reached her street. In the space between, a man in a red Peterbilt rolled toward both of them, part driver, part messenger, part link, in a line that had learned how to catch people before they broke on the ground. 1 year later, the sun slid low over a VA parking lot lined with idling rigs and folding chairs. A local station had set up 2 cameras and a boom mic between yellow lines. The segment was about veterans, K-9s, and the long-haul drivers who thread the country together without being seen. Jack stood beside his red Peterbilt in a clean denim shirt and an old ball cap. He looked like any driver waiting on a load, except for the way the crowd edged closer when he shifted his weight, like people unconsciously drawing toward a lighthouse. Rex lay at his boots, coat thick again, the scar at his tail just a pale line under fur. Dana had brought him down for a fundraiser and stood off to the side with the quiet posture of a guardian who prefers the shadows. Evan was there too, posture easy, a new steadiness in his jaw. The county on the banner behind them did not read Red Rock anymore. The camera crew had taped over it with a simple word. Home. The reporter checked her notes, then looked up at Jack. What made you stop that day? When you saw that truck? Most people would have just kept driving. Jack let a breath ride out. He set his palm, big and oil-scarred, on Rex's head. Truth is, I did not know what I was seeing. I just knew that dog was not trying to save himself. He was trying to save his Marine. I did not stop because I am a hero. I stopped because he refused to let go. The camera eased in. Rex's eyes filled the frame. Calm, deep, the kind of look that says a pact was made and kept. Before the reporter could ask the next question, movement rippled near the back row. A young vet in a desert blouse froze mid-clap. His fingers went rigid. His gaze tunneled past the horizon to somewhere no one else could see. His girlfriend whispered his name, and it did not land. Rex was up before anyone asked. He flowed through the gap in the chairs, no fuss, no bark, and pressed his shoulder to the man's shin. The touch was deliberate and firm. The man's breath caught, then stumbled, then found a rhythm. He dropped a hand, and it landed in thick fur. The stare softened. The girlfriend's shoulders fell into relief so sudden it looked like she had been holding her breath for a year. The boom mic caught none of it, but every eye saw. The reporter did not fill the silence. Only the camera whir and a long truck braking far off marked the moment. Evan cleared his throat and smiled without teeth. He knew that rescue by heart. The twist came quiet. Deputy Luis Alvarez stepped into the edge of the shot, a visitor from Phoenix in a plain suit. He did not pose. He shook Red's hand and handed over a folded memo. The DOJ had finalized a consent decree. The county would rewrite wellness check policy. Kennel access would require dual sign-off and body cam audit. The old impound keys had been melted down. Alvarez did not linger for applause. He nodded once at Rex, like a soldier saluting a senior. The reporter turned back, eyes bright. Does justice feel like enough? Jack looked past the camera to the lot where drivers topped off tanks, where veterans held paper cups of coffee like anchors. Justice is paperwork and handcuffs. It is needed, but healing is slower and louder in your own chest. That belongs to them. He nodded toward the vet, now rubbing Rex's ear. And to him. He faced the lens. What is your story with a loyal pet? The screen held one last shot. Jack's hand on Rex's head. Evan's smile small and true. Dana's shadow still. Red's arms folded, eyes wet and unashamed. The rig behind them caught the light until it looked like a road made of chrome. Fade to black, but not to silence. If this story reached you, if it reminded you that a dog can hear the truth before any of us, stand with us. Share your story. Support the dogs and the people who refuse to let go. Subscribe to German Shepherd and help us keep the line strong for the next Marine, the next driver, the next soul that needs a hand on a bad road.